So the next step is to get the values from the form, and to do that we're going to create two things. We need an age and a price. So again, I'm going to use filter input. This time I still need to bring my data in from the post array, but this time I'm going to go after the age, and this time I want to do validation as well. So I'm going to put in filter validate int. Now remember, with this particular command, if the value that was entered in and stored into age, if that's not an integer, then this variable here, age, is going to be set to false. If it's valid, it's going to be stored in there, and if it's missing, it's just not going to put anything there at all. So those are our three conditions that we're going to have. So I'm going to take the same variable here, and I'm going to paste it in for the price. Now for validating the age, the first thing we need to check is to see if nothing came back. I'm sorry, that's not true. We're going to check to see if an invalid value was put in. In other words, they typed in gibberish or something like that. It's not numeric. And if that happens, the validation will fail, and the age variable will actually be set to false. Now, this triple equals is different. You've never probably seen this if you've worked in the other languages. You know that a single equals is setting a value equal to a variable. A double equals is asking or comparing equality. And a triple equal also compares equality, but it does so in a type-safe way. In other words, it doesn't cast or switch the data types of either expression on either side of the operator so that they can be compared. So it won't convert to compare, whereas a double equals will. So if you need to know if a variable is equal to something and it doesn't have to be cast or converted over, then you would use a triple equals to test it. So in this case, we're seeing if age is equal to false. Notice false is all in uppercase. That's the Boolean false condition. And if it's false, then we want to do this. We want to set up a new variable called an error message. And we want to set the error message equal to a string that says that the age must be a valid number. And if the age is invalid, then we want to clear it or reset it so the user has to type it in. Now, if it's not non-numeric, then it is numeric. And if it is numeric, then we have to check it further to see if it's within range. And the conditions for this will be that if it's less than 1 or greater than 120, it's out of range. And if it's out of range, we're going to say that the age must be an integer between 1 and 120. And again, we'll set the age empty in that condition. Now for the price, it's going to be very similar. If the price is not numeric, we're going to set that error message to say price must be a valid number. And then we will set the price again equal to an empty string. Otherwise, we want to check the price to see if it's less than 0. If it's less than 0, obviously it can't be a negative number, so we'll say that the price must be greater than 0. Now, what do we do with the equal to 0 case? Do we want a meal to be free? Probably not, so I'll just go ahead and put the less than or equal to there to account for that situation. And then again, we need to set the price. We need to clear it. We need to clear that variable out. So now, when we get to this point, it says if the data are valid. How do we know if the data are valid or not? Well, we can check the error message string, because if we never set that error message, in other words, if we come up here and all of these things pass, let me rephrase that. They don't pass, right? This condition's not true. This one's not true, which means everything's cool for age. Same thing with price. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. We're good for price. In all those cases, we were setting the error message. If we come down here and the error message has not been set to anything, then we know that the data are valid. Now, because we're using this error message, and see here, if this isn't true, error message never gets created. If this isn't true, it never gets created, and so on down the line. So if we get to this point, we're checking error message. Well, it won't have ever been created if none of these things fire. And so what we want to do is up at the very top of our code listing, we want to initialize our variables, and the error message, we want to set that up here empty. And while we're up here, you should do the same thing for the price and for the age. Just clear everything out on reload right up at the top. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, if the user hits submit and the page reloads, you don't want to clear out the price or the age. And that's true, but we're resetting them here anyway. So every time we come through, we're getting them back out of the form. So it doesn't hurt to clear them because we're going to set them again. So that's how I would answer that particular question. So I'm going to go back down here to this. So at this point, the age is, I'm sorry, there are no invalid values. Everything is valid. So now we can proceed to do our calculations. So we're going to need a discount. And if the age is less than 10, the discount is going to equal the price times 0.20. It's 20% discount. So I'll just put a little comment here. 20% discount if the age is less than 10. Now, if the age is greater than 80, the discount will equal the price times, well, actually, they want 100% discount. In other words, they want it to be free. That would just be age. That would just be price times 1.00, which is kind of pointless. So I'll just do this: 100% discount if they enter, or if their age is over 80. What about the fact? What if they're over 60? Then they're going to get a discount of 10%. Now, let me show you something here that would cause an error, and it actually would be a logic error. It would compile and run, but it wouldn't work properly. The order of these statements is very important. If I were to switch this and write it like it is, like this, this intuitively might make sense to you, because you're saying, look, if the use 10, then use 60, then use 80. But here's the issue. If the age is greater than 80, you want 100% discount. But the problem is 80 is greater than 60. So this condition will be true whether they're greater than 60 or whether they're greater than 80. So we will never get to this line of code if they're greater than 80 is the problem. That's why we put the, oops, switched it off here, sorry about that. That's why we had to put the 80 first and then the 60 following it. So be careful, the point is here, be careful the order of your if statements to make sure that they make logical sense. They must make logical sense, and that will often require you to keep sequence in mind as you think it through. So now we have our discount calculated. Now we need to apply the discount. So what I'm going to do is make an adjusted cost and set that equal to the, did I say cost? Let's call it an adjusted price. Adjusted price equals the regular price minus the discount. Now, these numbers are just raw numbers. But when we display them, we want to make them look really nice, like nicely formatted values. And so what I'm going to do here is add in, let's see, I'll put here calculate adjusted price, and then I'm going to put a comment that says create nicely formatted strings for display. And what I'm going to do is use another function called number format. And here's how this works. First of all, I'm going to make a variable called price, and I'm going to add a underscore f to it, which really just means it's the formatted version of the price. That is strictly actually it's the book's idea. It's the naming of a variable. It has no significance other than to us it makes sense, but it's a very good idea. I like that they did that. So then what they do is they make a $, then they concatenate in another piece which calls number format, passes the price, and rounds it to 2 significant digits. Now, what I really think is nice about number format is that it puts in commas at the thousandth separator places. And I like that because then a lot of languages don't do that. So if your number is over 1,000, it will put the comma in for the thousandth separator. And it also does that for subsequent separators up the chain. And it rounds it to the nearest hundredths place, which is what we want. The only thing it doesn't do is put a $sign in front. So I'm going to add that in here at the beginning myself. I'm going to do the same thing for the discount. Let's see there. Let's see here. Yeah, the discount would come next. And we'll put here discount. It works the same way. So I'll go ahead and do the other one here next. Okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the same thing for the adjusted price, which is, so it'll be ADJ price. And I will put here, oops, that should be ADJ price underscore F, and then ADJ price, right? Looks right. So let's see. Good. Now this display results, this actually should come up underneath this curly brace because that's part of the conditional body of code that runs if there are no errors. So if there are no errors, what I want to do at this point is print out the results. Now, if you look at the document, you start at the top. Everything it's been doing so far has been PHP. We haven't written any HTML out at all. And so, if we get down to this point of displaying the results, it's now time to display the HTML. So to do that, I'm going to switch out of PHP here and back to HTML. And I'm going to start entering my HTML tags. So I've got the construction of my web page here. So I'm just going to put in the title, close up the head tag, do the body section, and I'm going to do my H1 header. Actually, you know what? Let me come down here. It's sitting right here. Let me just take this and copy and paste. Why am I typing it from scratch? It's kind of crazy. So I don't need to put the paragraph here because those were instructions and they've already done all that, and so I don't need that. I don't need the form anymore. I do still want the table, so I'm gonna take that piece and put that up here. And let's see. I don't need the button. I don't have a form anymore, so the body and the HTML tags at the bottom, I still want those. And make sure that, whoops, everything lines up here. Okay. Now don't forget this, and this is a real common mistake. Notice the curly braces that are down here. So at this point you're stopping HTML and you're going back into PHP, and so make sure you put in your delimiter entering you back into the PHP mode. This is what's nice about the colorizing tools. IntelliJ does this, and the other ones that we've talked about do as well. They color code things for you so that you can see when you're in or out of PHP mode, which is nice. Okay. Now let's look at this from top down a minute here. Let's say that the user comes in because they typed in their data that looked good and they hit submit. Okay, so the page comes back and it comes in from the top down. It clears the variables, it checks the submitted value, it is true, gets the values, they are valid, it calculates all the discount stuff, the adjusted price, it creates formatted values. Now it comes down here to display results, it switches into HTML mode, and it prints the stuff out. Now these inputs here need to be changed. We don't want input controls. We'll fix that here in a minute. But forget that for a second. Let's just say it prints everything out, and what do we want it to do next? Now, based on our code here, it's going to march right down into here on line 84 and print this out. The problem is this section down here is the web page that you display when you come in fresh. In fact, I can even put a comment here. The code shown below, actually it's not, it's really HTML, so HTML shown below is displayed when the user loads the page, we'll say from scratch. That being the case, we don't want this to happen if we display the results. So what we need to do here is, notice here we were in PHP, we switched out into HTML here, and we're switching back to PHP, and what we want to do before this curly brace closes is put in a function called exit. What exit does is it bails out of the document here, which means it won't run anything below. It's very important because when you're finished displaying the results, you want it to stop. This will cause that to occur. So look up here again at the logic. If submitted is true, it comes in. If data is valid, it comes in here. And this orange line follows the curly brace down. All of this happens if the data was good, including the exit. You want that to also happen. Then you stop the curly brace there, and this curly brace corresponds to the submitted condition up top. So hopefully you can see the logic here, what's happening here. It's very important that you understand that. And if that makes sense to you, what you've just done is you've avoided having to build two separate files. You can do all of this in one file using this technique. The only thing we have to change now are this little area up here. We don't want input controls. We want to show for the age is the actual age value. Now we can't just say echo age like that because we're in HTML through here. So we got to switch back to PHP, and then we can echo the age like this. You might be thinking this is a little bit strange, having to switch back and forth between the two languages, but it's perfectly acceptable and often necessary to do that. So just make sure you keep it straight. That's the bottom line. It can get confusing, so you want to use your programming skills that you've learned to keep this straight. There's one thing I didn't do right here. Oh no, that's okay. The age is fine. I was going to say, when you display the price, you don't want to echo price, you want to echo price underscore F, because you want to show the formatted value, not the original raw value. Now, we don't need this line anymore, but there are two more things we want to show that weren't there before. So I'm going to copy full price down twice, and I'm creating two more rows. I'm going to change this one to discounted amount, and I'm going to change the lowest one to, I don't know, adjusted, if that makes sense, to the user adjusted price. And this will be discount underscore F. This will be EDJ price underscore F. So those will all show now as they should. So, again, let's walk this from the top down one more time, and then we'll try to run it and see if it works. Scenario 1. User comes in on a fresh page load. The code runs, initializes the variables. Submitted is not set, therefore it will skip all of this code all the way down to here. It'll get out of PHP mode, go into HTML. It will display all of this data. Looks good, right? That page looks good. It's all blank. Everything should work fine. User types in their data. 50, 100. And they click the submit button. We got an error here, right? We've got a bug in here somewhere. We got to fix it, right? Let me back up here. Let's say a little magical wizard came along and fixed it for us. So we're going to hit submit. Okay. Let's just see what happens if you do. It comes back in to the page, initializes the variables. This time this will be true. So it will come in, validate your input, check to make sure it's valid, and we'll say that it is. Does all the calculations, creates the formatted values, and goes to display the results. Now, what's happening? We're getting a bunch of stuff up here. Where's that coming from? Okay. Age is displaying properly. But the other ones are not. Oh, I see what the problem is. These TD tags, my opening TD tag needs to be here ahead of the PHP like that. And again here. And again here. And the closing tags after it. So see how that was incorrect. And of course, I did that on purpose, of course, just to show you how that shouldn't work. Okay, yeah, right. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to reload this page. We'll try this again. 40 and 100. Hit submit. And life looks good at this point because you're 40, you get no discount. Let's try, let's say you're 110. Can't believe you can even eat that when you're that old, but you get the meal for free because you're not going to eat much anyway. If you're 1 year old and you have a $20 meal, you're going to get that 20% discount. So everything looks good. What about the case where they screw up with this? Well, it's not happy because it's asking them for the data again. The problem is it's not telling them anything. And it would be nice if we could still show the stuff that was right on the screen. So in other words, if they put 80 and gibberish and hit submit, it would be nice if the 80 stayed there. This would make sense to get rid of. And then we'd want some sort of an error message somewhere on the screen. So we're not quite finished yet, is my point. What about the error message that we set? We never really followed that up. Where would that go? Well, let's follow our logic here. Let's say we come in with bad data. So we initialize the data. It is submitted. We get the values. We validate. Something goes wrong in here, and an error message gets set. So this will be false. We'll skip all of that and take us down right to here. Well, what's going to happen is it's going to jump right down into this bottom section, which we meant to be used when the user loads the page from scratch. So what about, we're showing it, but we have errors. Can we do both of them together at the same time? Well, the answer is yes, we can, but we have to do a couple of things here to trick the system. Not trick it, but we have to write some code to modify this. Here's what we have to do. Right? Everything is cool until we get down to the form. So what I'm going to do is add some code here, and I'm going to put in a PHP section. And I'm going to say if the error message is not equal to nothing, which means if it's equal to something, then what I want to do is I want to show the error. So I'm going to break out of PHP here and back in here. And notice what's happening here. You're getting into PHP mode. You're asking a question. If it's true, you're putting a curly brace up. Then you're getting out of PHP to do something in HTML, which will be the display of a paragraph whose style will be a color set to red. And we'll display error, colon, space. And then we're going to go back into PHP here, and we're going to echo out the error message. Get out of PHP to finish the closing paragraph tag. Then back into PHP to do our curly brace. Then back out of PHP to continue with our form. So is that crazy or what? Right? Kind of crazy. But it's all legitimate. It's just a little bit cryptic. But it is valid. It should work. Not sure what its issue is here. Let's see. Oh, I closed that too soon. I got a little too carried away with my formatting. This should be like that. Again, I keep saying this, but This is where these tools are so nice because they point out errors. If I screw this thing up and I see any red squiggly lines anywhere, you need to stop and listen to the IDE and fix what the problem is. If you're just using a text editor, you're not going to get any of this help at all. So, if you haven't done that yet, I would suggest that you install one of these products. I particularly like IntelliJ a lot, but other ones are good too. Okay, so if they're coming down here, we need to change the comment. The HTML shown below is displayed when the user loads the page from scratch, or the user entered data, but it was invalid, and they must enter, they must fix whatever is wrong. Well, how are they going to fix what's wrong? They're going to come down to the text boxes. We said a minute ago that it would be nice if we could put in the data that was good and have them fix the stuff that's bad. Well, if you go back up here, you'll notice when we saw something that was bad, we cleared out the offending variable. But the good ones should still be okay. So what we'll do here is convert this into what we call a sticky form. Now, a sticky form is it persists the data in the form so that you don't have to keep entering it every time. So if you picture yourself on Amazon doing an order, or you're on Webkins doing an order for your kids, and you're entering all this stuff, and you put your credit card in, and you put your expiration date, and you go to do your security code, and you screw that up, and the page comes back up saying you missed it. It would be so frustrating if everything went blank and you had to re-enter all of that stuff. The good websites don't. They keep all the data there, because why re-enter it? So we're going to do that here. So to do that, we're going to go to our input control, and we're going to add something here. We're going to add a value attribute, and the value will be equal to whatever PHP echoes out for age. Now, here's the thing. Age may not be set. Age will not be set if it was invalid and was cleared, and age will not be set if it's the first time in. Either way, if it's not set, the text box will be empty, which is what we want. If the age is valid, it'll show it. So it really gets the job done for all the different scenarios. That's why this works. And the same thing for the price. We can do the same thing here. Echo the price. Now notice how this is all orange, right? That shouldn't be that way, right? It's because I forgot my question mark. So that's, again, nice to have the editor to fix stuff like that for me. Won't catch everything, but it'll catch a lot of stuff. You'd be surprised how much it will catch. And that will take care of that one. Okay, now let's do the 3 scenarios one more time to make sure everything's cool. User comes in fresh, brand new page reload, 3 variables are cleared. This will be false, skips over that big if statement, comes down here, shows the web page. Error message is empty, so it doesn't show an error message. Shows the form. It puts nothing in the values for age and price, so they do show up empty, as they should. Let's see if I can verify that that really behaves right. So come in fresh, everything is empty. That's great. If I behave myself and put in good data and hit submit, we get the results. Okay, so let's look at the code and see that. You enter good data, you hit submit. The action attribute is set to PHP self, so it comes back to the same document, reloads it, comes in, initializes the variables. This time submitted will be true, gets the values. They all pass validation. Comes here, there is no error message. Does all the math to calculate the values, formats them nicely, displays the results, Here's my HTML. There are no input controls. It's all straight, static data. And I echo out the formatted amounts for currency. And it exits. Perfect. The last scenario is if they come in and do something stupid. They put a good age, but they put a bad price, like -89. Hit submit. Notice you see a nice little error message in red. Age stays, price goes. And if I look at the code here, they come into the document with bad data. Strings get cleared, submit is true, get your values, age works, price does not, because the price is not less than or equal to, the price is less than or equal to 0. So it puts the error message price must be greater, clears the price, error message is not empty, so it skips all of this calculation stuff and the display of the results. And it skips all of this right down to the curly brace. So it picks up here, and of course there's nothing there to do, so it exits the curly brace, comes down to this section, and there is an error message, so it prints it out in red because of my paragraph style. It echoes the error message out between the paragraph tags. When it presents the form, it echoes out the age and price depending on what's been set and what hasn't been set. And there's my submit button so I can fix it and hit submit again. And depending on how I did, either get the right result or repeat that scenario we just went through again. So the upside to this approach is it's one file. The downside to the approach is it's a little bit more complicated, although if you understand the logic of it, it makes perfect sense. It's not that hard to do if you can see what's going on here. Now, in the chapter, when they show you this future value program, they don't do it that way. They actually show the two separate page approach. Now, I'm pretty sure later in the book they give you the approach with one page, but they probably do it a little differently. We'll have to see. The point is that when you look at your book on page 81, they have the first page, they have the second page, and they have the first page with an error message. We have basically taken those three scenarios and solved them all using one file instead of two, making things cleaner, making things more contained, and it's just a nicer implementation to code up. So that's the video series for this lesson, and I hope you found this helpful. This should give you a good starting point on your assignment, although certainly the book, their approach is equally valid. You could use either approach really, and in any future assignments where you have to do this, you can use this approach. So with that, I think we're good for this lesson. I'm going to close this series of videos out, and we will see you in lesson 3, which is going to get us into MySQL. So until then, have a good rest of the week. We'll talk to you soon.